Hi there, folks. My name is Overwing24, and welcome to another Microsoft Flight Simulator product review. And today we are having a look at one of those fantastical aircraft that could have been. Well, I suppose that's not 100% accurate. This one did actually fly with less than spectacular results. But we are here today having a look at the Hughes XF-11, brought to us by developer Flying Fries. So this is a absolutely fascinating aircraft, this one, and funnily enough, it has become more famous in recent years than it probably ever did during its brief existence in the real world. So what is the Hughes XF-11? Well, funnily enough, is derived from the name. It is the result of Hughes Aircraft Company, and of course the brainchild of the insane, questionably, a CEO of questionable sanity, Howard Hughes himself. So the XF-11 was one of two projects that that Howard Hughes lobbied for and got awarded to his company Hughes Aircraft for two military contracts during the Second World War. The first being the infamous Spruce Goose, or officially the H-4 Hercules, and the second for the lesser-known Hughes XF-11, which don't let the F designation fool you. This was not a fighter. So during this period of naming nomenclature in the U.S. military services, the F designation indicated that it was a photographic reconnaissance aircraft. So the premise of this aircraft was brought about by a U.S. Army Air Force's requirement for long-range photo reconnaissance for both target planning and also for post-strike assessment. And the interim options that were being used at the time in the Pacific and in the European theaters were, well, Europe wasn't so bad, but definitely in the Pacific theaters there was a lot of challenge having to take combat aircraft off the front line to be able to reconfigure them to be less than designed for role as a reconnaissance aircraft. So the U.S. Army Air Forces were looking for a dedicated reconnaissance aircraft, and the proposal was brought forward, and two aircraft were awarded contracts, the first being the Hughes XF-11 and the second being the Republic XF-12 Rainbow. Both of which, funnily enough, incidentally, would go on to fly, and both of which would only ever see two aircraft produced before their orders were cancelled. Something, end of the Second World War. Anyway, moving on. That's enough of that history lesson. So the XF-11 was mired in controversy and delays, and was itself it emerged from a previous Hughes aircraft design, the D2, but traded in the wooden construction of that aircraft for an all-metal construction for the XF-11. So the aircraft is basically, it just screams Howard Hughes. It really, really does. Like, it screams, for me, it always screams speed, especially with the twin contra-rotating props. And I'm not going to lie, when I reported on this in the Nova app a couple of weeks ago, I was hooked straight away because I love contra-rotating propellers. I know they are the bane of every engineer's existence in real life. And for virtual productions, they are a absolute monster and a horrible thing to have to model, but I absolutely love them, so any chance I get to fly a contra-rotating prop, I am going to take it. Anyway, all right. So it's been interesting to see Lord Frites bringing it to life, and we're going to go through our standard sort of review process here. We're going to have a look at the external model here. We're then going to go through a cold and dark start. We're going to look at some of the cool little features of it, go for a test flight, bring it in for a landing, hopefully safely, and hopefully we can show off some of the fun elements of this aircraft. So I guess the first thing is that Lord Frites has been around for quite a while, producing quite a bit of freeware, and this is their first payware product. And my overall first impressions is they've done a pretty damn good job. For those of you who might be very used to, say, your modern avionics, don't worry. Although this does use period avionics and period controls and systems and everything set up, there are some concessions made to aviators who prefer to have things a little bit more modern. Don't worry about that. All right, as I said, we're going to go through and have a look at the external model here, and the external model is pretty damn good. And the interesting thing about this aircraft is that because there was only ever two made or two flown, and a third one that was a ground instructional airframe, because of the nature of Howard Hughes, not a lot of documentation has actually survived about the aircraft. So a lot of research and a lot of passion went into actually creating this aircraft by the team over at Lord Frites. So huge props to them for bringing this aircraft to life, because it is definitely one of those aircraft that is iconic and yet so unknown as well at the same time. Except, of course, because of Leonardo DiCaprio in his starring role in The Aviator, where, yes, that actually did happen. Howard Hughes he took it for its first test flight, breached all of the protocols, and managed to crash the aircraft and cause severe property damage on the ground. Which, when you think about that this is a photo reconnaissance aircraft, being able to destroy things is, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but he did it anyway. All right, but in terms of the external model is pretty damn good. I really like the attention to detail that's been done on, like, the weathering is really good on the textures. In terms of the actual modeling, yeah, we've got, for the rivet counters out there are all the variety of rivets that you can go along and count if you so desire. But one thing that I actually did want to show off, and I know you may have noticed the fact that our wing is basically covering this entire barren here. So I originally thought about moving where I was going to film this from where I spawned in here at Burbank, but then I thought, you know what, no, actually I want to leave it here because I want to give the idea of just how big this aeroplane is for a Second World War piston engine driven aircraft. This thing is huge. Like, it is not small. As I said, like, you know, the wing, you know, parked just normally where it is, you know, here on the ramp, the wing basically covers 2/3 of this little barren just sitting here beside it. And it's like, yeah, this thing isn't small. It is absolutely not small. And that again plays into the fact that if you think that the F designation means this is a fighter, you are absolutely mistaken. This thing handles like a brick. We will see that later in the video when we go flying, because, yeah, as I said, it's designed to fly a long way, very, very high, and very, very straight. So maneuverability is one of the challenges of this aircraft, not only virtually but also in the real aeroplane as well. It had absolutely atrocious low speed handling characteristics, potentially causing some, or, you know, definitely adding to the inability for Howard Hughes to complete a successful landing on a golf course and winding up in some houses. So, yeah, if you're trying at the same time, it handles really well, and again, we'll see that once we get in the air. But I just wanted to show this off, that the modeling has been done really, really well. We do have these optional external drop tanks as well, which you can add and remove. But we'll talk more about those when we talk about the fuel system in the aircraft. All right, I think that's enough of us talking about the outside of the aircraft here. Like, just contra-rotating props. Like, look how awesome they are. They are just amazing. They really, really are. The only sort of, I got a couple of minor bugbears with the external model, and that's only when you look really, really closely at bits of the nose gear. They just look a little unclean, but overall, for the aircraft, when, you know, the aircraft itself, yeah, pretty damn impressed by the model, and I think it is a pretty good effort. All right, well, let's climb into the aircraft, so we can get into the office, so we can check it out. So we're going to go in here through the access ladder and the crew door. So it's time for us to get in there. All right, so here we are in the office of the XF-11, and from what I can see, it matches the few pictures I could find of what the interior looked like. This matches it, and overall the quality looks pretty good, the things that you'd expect. And again, remembering that this aircraft, and this is produced to us as the XF-11 Mark 1 with the contra-rotating propellers, which was essentially, it was a prototype. It wasn't even a pre-production. This was a prototype aircraft. But you have all the gauges that you need and all the controls that you need and everything to be able to operate the aircraft, and all modeled in some pretty good detail. There are some additional switches that have been added to make life a bit easier for us as virtual aviators, but they're also tied to some of the really, really cool features that feature in this aircraft. And before we get started, I want to go through them. But first off, I'm gonna talk about what we're about to go through. So these are some of the extra switches that I was talking about here. So so like, okay, we've got these things here. What goes on, what goes off, and stuff like that. Okay, but what's really cool about what Lord Frites has done here for this aircraft is that he's made these so yes, we can sit here in our cockpit and we can control them all here if we need to. That's fine. But if you want to be more hands-on with your aircraft and you actually want to, do your walk around and actually follow the processes and procedures, you know what? You absolutely can. So let's go and have a look and do that, shall we? So first off, let's head back down into the crew entry bay. And again, maybe not again, but something else I want to show you is that the detail that's gone through into this add-on doesn't just extend to, just the cockpit. There is everything here. Like this hatch, this entryway hatch is got detail. We've got a photo of the man himself posing in front of the aircraft. So it's so cool. Like we've got our fully engaged fuel system where you can actually manipulate all the valves for your fuel systems should you so desire. I highly recommend that you leave them alone, or unless you're troubleshooting if you've got a failed tank, which there's a really cool failure system modeled. But these are some of the things that I want to talk about. Okay, so let's have a look here. So we've got a ground power unit. Now, you open this one here, and this is where you connect the GPU. So you click here, and not only does a cable just randomly come in, the GPU actually appears, and yes, you can turn it on from here. Now, could you do this directly? And I've just noticed that it even has a little heat thing coming out. That's kind of cool. Awesome. Now, could I have just sat in the cockpit and done that? Absolutely, I could have done that. But if you want to walk around and do the pre-flight yourself, you absolutely can. And that's just one of those neat little small things that I really, really appreciate the team actually delivering to us, and I think is a really, really cool thing to do. Something else that's on here as well is that you may or may not have noticed during our walk around that we have our engine covers in place. And again, you can one-click those from the cockpit, or you can actually walk around to each engine cover and you can actually remove them. So it's one of those things where this is an aircraft that is the detail and the modeling that's going into this from the team at Lord Frites, from Lord Frites and his team, is such that whether you're a casual player or whether you're an average player, or whether you are going, I want to walk around the aircraft, I want to do every single piece of a pre-flight inspection, this aircraft supports all of you and has all of those options available for you if you so desire. You can also manually set, engage, or remove the wheel chocks. I am going to leave those engaged because I'll get my ground crew to remove those from the cockpit later. But yeah, this is like some of the this is the cool features that are available in this aircraft that the team has actually modeled in here, and I think that that's just such a cool. Does it make a huge difference to a lot of people? You know what? Probably not. But for me, details like these always show the level of passion that developers are putting in to their products to actually enable us to be able to see things and actually do things for here. So, yeah. Is it something that I'm going to do every flight? You know what? Probably not. But at the same time, I'm going to do it, every now and again because I want to be able to, because I really want to be able to appreciate the effort that's gone into it from a developer. And as a developer myself, seeing things like this for me says so much about what the developer does and what I'm going to expect for the rest of their product. So the first impressions, like straight up before I'd even started this aircraft for the first time, already seeing things like this was like, okay, a lot has gone into this aircraft, and I'm really, really impressed. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get our ground crew to stow the ladder, and yes, the ladder gets stowed up into the nose gear bay. So I think that's really cool. All right, let's now return back to the cockpit. Let's just do a little bit of a shortcut there. Okay, so let's go through, explore a few more things about the cockpit here. All right. Now, many of us who fly modern aircraft would have been used to seeing, or even aircraft that are period and got some customized avionics in it, would be used to seeing an electronic flight bag. Well, fun story, they didn't exist back in 1947. Instead, you had the first generation of electronic flight bags where you had a clipboard. And this reminds me very much of the Wing 42, some of the Wing 42 aircraft, where you've got an interactive wooden clipboard here to be able to set and control a lot of the aircraft's features and some of the cool things about it. So first off is one of the things that Lord Frites talks about is that this is you don't have to use, and he recommends not using the in-sim payload manager for your fuel for your fuel. It has a custom coded fuel system which involves you when your engine's stopped and parking brake on, you can call the fuel truck. So we'll call the fuel truck and let's go and have a quick look at it, see it appear. There is our fuel truck ready to fuel up our aircraft. I think the other thing missing from that is maybe a big Texaco sign on the side. Anyway, all right, so with our fuel truck present, now what we can do is we can connect the fuel to whichever tank we want it to fill at the time. And as I said, like this thing's got a lot of tanks. Like this thing has 7 tanks in total if you got all the drop tanks fitted as well. So what you do is you click which tank you want it to connect to. So we're going to start by doing our right tail. And then if we have a look outside the aircraft, we can see now that the fuel line is actually hosed up and, all connected up into the aircraft itself. So again, small little detail, but loving the fact that those details are actually included, and that hose will change depending on which tank we select we want it to fill up at the time. All right, so we've got our fuel tank connected to our right tail. So we're going to put full fuel in the right tail. We're then going to tell them to go head over to the left tail, put in a full fuel there. Now, if you want to change the fuel amounts, you want to defuel or whatever, you can just click in various different places, and you can do it all the way down to draining the tank in full, or click wherever you like in 20% increments. All right, I'm also going to put a little bit of fuel in each of our drop tanks. So I'm going to put 60% fuel in each of the drop tanks, and that should be more than enough. We're only doing a short flight, but I do want to show how this aircraft performs under with fairly heavy loads. All right, and once you've finished fueling your aircraft, you go disconnect your fuel tank, and then you can dismiss your fuel truck and wave the fuel truck away. Bye. The drop tanks are removable, so you can, if you don't want to fly with them and you want to leave them off, you can just click here to simply remove drop tanks, and they disappear from the aircraft. And you can see here now our drop tanks are no longer present on the aircraft, but I'm going to be flying with drop tanks today. So I'm going to reattach the drop tanks. Now, what it does do, side note, even if you had fuel in them previously, you then get no fuel. You get the drop tanks attached with no fuel. So we are going to put some fuel back into those tanks. There we go, that is done and disconnected, and we can dismiss our fuel truck again. Okay, so that is our fueling complete. So before we go through, before we get started with the aircraft, let's go through the rest of the options here. So failures, it does have a custom failure or a random failure system available to you. Or if you want to force a failure, you absolutely can. You just sort of click on one of these green dots to trigger a failure, whether it be a fuel leak, whether it be an engine failure, or hydraulics or other systems are failing. Beyond that, we've got some other options here. Now, this is where I was talking before about so this is where you can enable your random failures, where, again, the manual override is still available to you if you want it. It's up to you if you want to be able to do this or not. Completely up to you, but it is kind of fun, kind of interesting, and a bit of a challenge to be able to see how you react, because this aircraft, in my experience already testing out some of the failures, it can be very challenging when some certain things fail. So yeah, there you go. Beyond that, you have the option for modern avionics suite if you wish to be if you wish to fly this as it might be if it was a new one made today. So I'll just quickly hide the yoke so you can see the changes in the instrument panel here. So if you do want to equip a Garmin unit, you have the option of equipping either the Garmin GTN 750 from PMS, either the free or payware version, it doesn't matter. Alternatively, you can also use the working title GNS 530, which is the default one for the sim, or you can maintain the original period avionics, and that is the one that I am going to be flying with today. Alright, so let's now go through our startup procedure. Now, again, so this is something that I know many of you have heard from me ad nauseum, and one of the things that I always look for is I always look for a checklist, and I have to give a huge shout out to Lord Frites for this, because his checklist is very comprehensive and exactly what I expect, and it is great to see the developer producing this, and yeah, it is great. It is exactly what I expect. And this is something where I've talked about before, where all developers should really be doing this. This is a very much an expectation. Default aircraft have it. It is vital for new aviators. It is vital for anybody learning the aircraft, but especially vital for anyone who doesn't have access to be able to review other documentation, like of our Xbox family, but also for aviators in VR. So well done, Lord Frites, for making sure that you included the checklist. All right, so speaking of which, let's make a start with that. Okay, so we've got our landing gear is set down. Check. Okay, parking brake is set. Wheel chocks are set. We did that during our pre-flight. Throttles are closed. Okay, mags left and right are off. Circuit breakers are all in, and the circuit breakers are modeled. They are all here, and yes, they are fully functional. Yes, you can pull them and the corresponding system will stop working. So for those of you who are obsessed by circuit breakers, this aircraft fulfills your desires. All right, all of our lights are set to off. That's check. Okay, battery switch set to on. Okay, bat switch on, nav lights set to on, interior lights as required. We're flying during the day here in sunny California, so we don't need to worry about those at this time. Alright, our access door is open and our ladder is deployed. So actually we put the ladder away, but we'll skip that one. That's fine. Ground power unit is plugged in. We did that before, and ground power unit is powered on because we did all that again on our walk around. But for those of you who are, as I talked about earlier, if you want to be able to do all this from the comfort of the cockpit, you absolutely can just by using the switches on here. All right, our drop tanks are set and refueled. Fuel trunk, we've done our fueling already, so we are good to go there. Engine covers are removed. We did those manually, but it's I just cycled it, as I said, like that's how you can control it if you just want to do it from the cockpit. All right, wheel chocks removed, so we'll ask the ground crew to remove our wheel chocks, so they're clear now. All right, our fuel valves are open. So if we want to check that, so what we do is we go back in the back of the cockpit here. We go back into this little area here, and we make sure that all our fuel valves open. By default, they are all open. So unless you start messing with this, then you should be fine. Bear in mind that this aircraft does have persistent state saving. So if you mess with one of these fuel valves on one flight, then it will stay like that until you reset it. So persistence is a key thing with this aircraft. So just remember that when you start messing around with things. Okay. But our fuel valves are all set to open, so we are good. So before starting, checklist complete. All right, now on to our starting checklist. All right, we've got to open up our cowl flaps, and this is kind of cool as well. So we've got a handle here. It automatically goes nuts and opens up the cowl flaps. So I like the clunking metallic sound that goes with it as well. So that's a nice touch, that one. Okay, failures set to none, so we will check that, but we can say yes. All good. Captain, have a safe flight. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. It's a shame that they don't have a name. Anyway, all right, propellers are unfeathered, so that's correct. That will be depressed if we were to feather the prop, but we are good, but that is not the case. All right, left mixture is set to full rich. There we go. Left prop pitch full fine. Okay, left throttle is set to idle. Left engine fuel selector set to left. Fuel feed selector set to tail for start. Okay, fuel pumps on. Yeah, one of the fun things, by the way, folks, is an engine, an air star for an engine is a terrifying thing. So yeah, try not to stall the engines while you're flying. FYI. Anyway, all right. Okay, fuel pumps are set to on. Magnetos set to both. Now, it's a minor thing, but one of the things that I do notice about this add-on is any multi-position switches. So the magneto switches, for example, you simply have off or both. You don't have the option to go through the stage of left, right. It is just simply off or both. It's a binary option. And the other place where there's a binary option, which is a minor bugbear for me, is your landing and taxi lights. It's a 3-position switch, but you can't go from landing light back to taxi, go straight back to off. It's a minor thing, and it doesn't really affect anything, but it's just something to be aware of. Anyway, back to our engine start. All right, left magnetos set to both. What's good? Engine primer. 1 to 2 seconds, and then engine start. I love the ginormous cloud of smoke that just like billows out of the engine when it starts. Like, that's just, and very, very true for the aircraft engines that this uses. It uses the same engines as the H4 Hercules, so it is very, I'm not surprised it has that amount of smoke, but it is really cool to see that it's actually modeled like that. Okay, so engines set. Okay, we are good. And left generator now on after engine start. There we go. Okay, so we are left start sequence is complete. All right, now onto the right engine. Okay, right engine unfeathered. Right mixture full rich. Prop pitch full fine. Right throttle set to idle. Right fuel selector set to tail. Okay. Right pumps set to on, and you do need to leave the pumps on full flight. So this is not like modern aircraft or other aircraft where you only need the pumps for the engine start. Your engine pumps need to be on the entire time you're flying and you want the engine running. Okay, right fuel pumps are on, magnetos set to both. Right primer. Okay, and engine start. Again, that ginormous cloud of smoke just billowing over the aircraft. And I love they actually got the contra-rotating prop sequence and actually seeing them spin in the opposite directions. It's one of those, again, I just love seeing it. You can actually see the difference in the turning of the blades and of the engine, of the propeller hubs. Alright, primer starters complete, right generator is now on. Okay, engine start sequence complete. Alright, after starting engines checklist. Alright, avionics master is set to on. Ground power unit unplug, so we can unplug the GPU from here just by clicking the disconnect button there. We probably were supposed to power it off before we do that, so we may have just given our ground crew a bit of a spark, but that's okay. I'm sure they're still alive. Alright, access ladder is now stowed. We did that before, and now we're going to close the access door. Door indicator is out. So there are two others. There's another door. There's a utility door with some other servicing equipment. You can open both of those, but it does need battery power to open. Alright, door indicator is off. Left engine fuel selector as required. We're going to change left engine fuel, left feed from tail to drop tanks. We're going to use our drop tanks first. We're going to use that both for left and right feed. Always use the droppable tanks first. Okay, we are good to go there. Center fuel selector. So we'll set that. We'll leave that closed for now, but that's essentially, these essentially funnel into the feed tanks. So for long range hops, essentially what you'd be wanting to do is you're wanting to rotate these through to both to feed both left and right feed tanks correctly or evenly, and we engage the fuel pumps. But we are not going to worry about that at least at this time. So we can check through the rest of those because they are set up where I would like them to be. Now the pressurization system is modeled here, but it's very, very simple. It's just simply, it's an on-off switch. It's all automatic after that. So we will engage the pressurization system, get it on. All right, control system, control services, free and responsive. Okay, so let's check our rudders. Checked. Elevator and ailerons. There we go. Okay, controls free and clear. Okay, recognition, lights and color codes. So this is interesting. So the modeling of this one, you do have as many aircraft of the period they had 3 colors of recognition lights mounted in the aircraft. They are mounted in the belly of the aircraft on this one. This one, they are all individually operationable, and if anybody who has an XF-11 will see them correctly. If you don't have the XF-11, you won't, but if you do, you will be able to see those recognition lights correctly. I am going to run with a green recognition light today, just because I can. Recognition light and color codes as required. Alright, so after start checklist is complete. Alright, we're going to turn our taxi light on, engage our pitot heat, anti-ice as required. We're going to leave our anti-ice off for now, but we will turn that on once we're lined up on the runway. Actually, you will turn them once we're about to line up on the runway. We're not going to turn our strobe lights on until we get to the runway. Elevator trim set to neutral. So our trim wheel here, so neutral trim setting there. Alright, aileron and rudder trims are zeroed, which they are by default, so we are set there. Okay, that is our taxi checklist complete. Alright, let's now head out onto the runway and prepare ourselves for takeoff. I just want to make sure that I didn't forget anything. I'm pretty sure we're good to go for the moment. Alright, so let's go parking brake release. Okay, brakes check. Brakes checked. Alright, we are good for our taxi. Now I'm going to secure the compartment hatch. There we go. And we've got our navigator, co-pilot here. So fun story, they can either be located in the nose and you can change their position, or if you engage this seat here, they move into the seat behind us. So we're gonna put our co-pilot up in the cockpit seat for now. We'll move them to the bombardier / recon officer's position a little bit later. All right, let's now taxi out. I chose Bob Hope Airfield here because it is the airfield that is closest to the one that this aircraft actually first flew on, the first aircraft flew from, because sadly that airport is no longer in existence. Now, as we taxi out, have a quick talk about the liveries. So this ship's with 7 different liveries available for the aircraft. So the aircraft only ever had one technically two liveries, which was essentially the first two that are included with this one, which is the one that we're flying today, which is known also, they call it the Hollywood livery, which was actually applied to the Mark II, not the Mark I, which was the second flying example that was used for limited testing after the crash of the first prototype. The second livery is the true-to-life livery that was worn by the first aircraft on its cursed maiden flight. It then has a number of fictional liveries, giving an idea of, what if it was in, an all-black color scheme, a green scheme, and then a junkyard. They call it there's one that's like a scrapyard scheme, which is basically the actual original scheme, but if it had been left rotting in a hangar for 50 years, and what that might look like. So they're kind of cool. There's a couple of other. There's a fictional racer one as well, because one of the things about this aircraft is that it is fast. The stupid amount of power that this thing puts out, and how aerodynamically clean this aircraft is, it puts out a pretty impressive amount of speed, and is a very impressive aircraft in straight line. As I said before, it's not a very maneuverable aircraft, so I would not be wanting to fly this at Reno or anything like that. But if for a straight down the line racer, this thing moves. It really, really does. So it's got some impressive performance stats here. All right, let's check our wind. Looks like we're going to be coming out of. Looks like limited slow winds are coming out of the west. We'll see if that aircraft clears off the runway for us by the time we taxi down. Across the runway. All right, as we will line up and wait, or as we taxi to our hold position here. So one of the things that you notice especially when you've got power running, is you notice the aircraft has quite a bit of vibration to it, and that's because quite frankly these engines were insanely powerful. And that was some of the commentary that was made about this aircraft, is that there was a lot of vibration in it, and obviously that would have been ironed out in a future should this aircraft have entered production. But it gives you that authentic feel, and it really makes you connect with how much raw power this aircraft has. It just has an insane amount of raw power. All right, so let's prepare our aircraft for takeoff. Okay, so 10 degrees flaps. Interesting, fun thing as well, if you're looking for the manual and you didn't or anything else, they've even got a QR code down here. That's the attention to detail for the customers here that Lord Frites is done is impressive, to say the least. All right, takeoff trims. Set up to, and there we go, line up for our takeoff trim. Takeoff trims set. Landing lights on. Okay, mixtures set to full rich, props set to full fine. Okay, so takeoff procedure is 130 knots. Is ease back on the yoke. After takeoff, clean up at 200 knots, flaps up, landing gear light and landing lights off. Okay. All right, let's close that up. Let's we've got. Can we get? You think we can take off before they do? I think we can. They're definitely not going to be affected by our turbulence. All right, strap on in, folks. All right, line up. Okay, throttles max. Brakes off. It is very stable because you have, not only is it twin engine, you got the contra-rotating propellers as well. It is very stable on the roll. Very easy, just barely even had to touch the stick to bring it up. But one of the things that you notice very quickly, and it goes to what I was talking about before, is that the speed of this thing is absolutely insane. Like, the climb rate is bonkers. Like, it is absolutely insane. This thing, it really is built for speed. Like, it looks like it's built for speed, and it absolutely is. We've got an insane climb rate already. So I'm already going to put the de-ice on as we're climbing out. Because this is in climb rate, we are already blowing through. We are well over 4,000 feet per minute climb rate with the engines at full power, clearing through 7,000 feet already. It is just nuts, this aircraft. Now, once you get above, I think it's about 15,000 feet, 10 or 15,000 feet, your climb rate will significantly slow, but you also have to be prepared to be on top of your mixture adjustments, because the mixture adjustments, in order to get the most performance out of this aircraft, you have to bring the mixture all the way down. There's no auto lean or auto rich for this aircraft. It is full manual. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start leaning out this mixture. And straight away you can see the difference in power that caused as I did that for one engine quickly, because I sort of yanked it back and then, which you should never do, by the way. But you can but that shows that they've modeled the way the engines work pretty damn well. Alright, so we're passing through 13,000 feet already. Like, it is just absolutely insane, this aircraft. I mean, the aircraft itself was designed designed for speed. It was designed for high altitude and high speed for reconnaissance, and you really get that feeling from this. And quite frankly, this thing goes insanely fast, even close to the ground as well. What we're going to do is we're going to come up. I'm going to come up on 15,000, and then I'm going to quickly cross-reference my checks for what my mixture settings need to be before we continue climbing up there. So we're just going to. But the other thing is that you do have to watch your speed, because once you get up here, you've got to stay on top of your mixture to make sure that you are getting the most power out of these massive engines for the height that you are flying at. So I'm going to quickly cross-reference that as we come up on 15,000. All right, so we're looking at being around about 40 to about 43%. There's a handy chart in the manual for this one. That's one of the things that I do wish that it was very frustrating that was removed from a previous update for MSFS, was that the percentage amount was removed from the mixture tooltip. I really hope Asobo bring that back, because that is very frustrating that is no longer there. Now, once you're above sort of 15, you want to be targeting 1,000 feet per minute climb rate in order to be able to get to your targeted altitude. This aircraft is designed to cruise at about 30,000 feet with an operational ceiling of 40,000 feet. I have taken it up to 30,000 feet with no issues, but you have to be on top of your mixture adjustments while you are flying it. One of the things about this aircraft, though, just while we do a little bit of a lazy turn over the California coast here, is that the sound set for the aircraft is, because the real aircraft doesn't exist, they couldn't exactly go and get a real sound set. They've done a reasonable workaround for the engines, because it does use the same engines out as the H4 Hercules does, the Spruce Goose does. It does make use of part of the sound set from the Spruce Goose, because they are aircraft of the same era, same engines, same designer, so it does make sense for them to use that, and I think that's a reasonable decision. Would I like to have seen them use a custom sound set for the Wasp Major? Absolutely. But I understand if you've got a sound set available to you to use that you know that people can have, then sure, I think it is perfectly fine to make use of that sound set that's available to you. Alright. that. Push the manifold pressures here. Climb. It does mean though, but because they do choose to, because they are reusing that sound set, it does have some quirks every now and again with sometimes the sound set has some issues in multiplayer, and I think there's a couple of issues with it when playing as well. But overall, it's still a sound set from that engine, so I think it's an acceptable workaround. And the rest of the sound design, fairly solid and fairly even. Now that we're airborne and in a steady climb here, so there's a slow and steady climb there. A bit more power there as we pass through 16. I was just cross-referencing my fuel lean, like how much I've got to lean the mixture, and I've got to lean it a bit more. Go. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do with this aircraft is that you don't want to maneuver her suddenly or violently. She does not like that in any way, shape or form. And it is something that you should avoid at all costs, because one of the things you do not want to do is that you do not want to have a engine stall while you're flying, because the the aircraft, when she's not moving quickly, has the aerodynamic capabilities of a brick. And again, that is from reports. That is just like it was in real life. So you can lose a not insignificant amount of altitude while you're trying to do an air start of the aircraft's engine, and that is something that, as I said, you want to try and avoid at all costs. Alright, so you can see we're just monitoring our fuel there, so you can see that we're using our drop tanks at the moment. We will need to change from our drop tanks at some point, but probably not for a while. Now, for those who are wondering about autopilots and stuff like that, there is a basic period autopilot available to you, which is available down here. It is very basic. It doesn't do a whole lot. Essentially, you put our heading bug here, so we are currently heading pretty much north. So we're going to put our heading bug to... Actually, you know what? I'm going to put the heading bug over to 0... 30. There we go. Okay. Lean that mixture a bit more. Okay, and again, you get that, and you actually almost, you feel, you see the performance boost when you're leaning. So you watch the speed decreasing, you feel the performance decreasing when you're not keeping on top of that that adjustment to your mixture. So the engine modelling, the team at Lord Frites has done an incredible job with the modelling the engine dynamics, because unless you're on top of that that adjustment of your leaning of your mixture, your performance will tank very, very quickly as you go up through altitude. Alright, as we come up on 20,000 feet here, I'm not going to go up to 30,000 for this feet here, I'm going to go up to 20,000. So I trim this one out, and then I can gauge and show the autopilot. As I said, it's a basic autopilot. It's not a Sperry, but it is a very, very basic autopilot. So as we come up here, coming up to around about 20,000 feet, what we're going to do is we're going to engage that. So come up nearly, trim down a little bit, so coming up to 20,000, 200 feet to run. There we go. Okay, so autopilot master is on, heading hold on, and altitude hold on. So it is a very basic autopilot. That's it. That's all it does. It's a heading hold and an altitude hold, or a bank hold and a pitch hold. They are binary switches. They're not compatible. That's it. If you do use the modern avionics, it does give you a little bit extra as well, but it still is just this basic functionality. There is not a lot to it. Alright, now that we've got our basic autopilot set up for a test here, let's go and have a check out of the external model, and we'll have a look at, actually before we go and have a look at the external model, let's have a look at some of the other cool features of the internal model here. So let's now explore the rest of the cockpit. So go around here, we'll put our clipboard away. Alright, so we saw before that, we've got we can hide we can, close away the hatch to the area down below. As I said, the switches all work. I'm not going to pull anything just yet. But you do have this fully set up. I'm not going to say it's a navigator station because it kind of is, it kind of isn't. But again, it's geared as much as it was for its prototype performance, rather maybe not so much for its operational performance. You do have, this is a comms radio that is functional if you so desire. You can use this one. This is where your comms radio is. It's you tune it with the frequencies there with it on, headset on. The recorder doesn't technically work. You can change the tapes. You can change the tapes here, but it doesn't actually play anything. So, I mean, I'm okay with it not doing that, but yeah, it is something for you to do. So if you're wondering why you can't talk in the radios with this one, your radio lives back here. And we can now hear that the audio is now picked up. It also, as I said before, you've got the option to send our fellow aviator back into the nose of the aircraft, and we'll cover that in a minute. A couple of nice little things here. You've got the information about heading, altitude, and airspeed in the back here for your navigator. This was one of my favourite parts because, who can go wrong? Who doesn't like a bottle of wine and a baguette and some brie? Like, who doesn't like that? So I fully approve of having a bottle of wine, bread, and cheese in my aircraft. I fully approve of that, so Lord Frites, please include that in future aircraft as well. Alright, let's now head into the forward part of the aircraft. As I said, our fellow aviator has moved into position now in the recon part, or the nose area of the aircraft, so you can actually get an amazing view outside of the outside world from the nose of the aircraft. Very, very cinematographic. And again, lining up with the aircraft's intended role as a photographic reconnaissance platform. So this is stuff that is all exactly as I expected to see, and the fact that they actually bothered to put this detail in here is something that is very important. But possibly what is even more important than that is if you need a snack mid-flight. You have some fries available, some hot fries available for you to have as your in-flight snack. Unfortunately, and somewhat realistically, once you've eaten all your delicious fries in the front cockpit here, you have to wait till you're on the ground before you can restock them. So, yeah, I approve. I appreciate, and I approve. So yes, that's some of the cool features here inside the cabin of the aircraft. There are a couple of more other ones which I talked about, but I'll let you discover them. I think would be a good way to do that. Alright, now that we've had a look around the rest of this amazing office, let's jump out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to check my drop tank fuel, make sure, because I know I'm burning through it at a reasonable rate. Let's now head down, or head outside, and have a look at the aircraft in flight. So when viewed in its natural habitat, the XF-11 really does just look absolutely impressive. It really, really does. And I think the modelling is just so well done. As I said, I think they've captured the spirit of the aircraft, as well as it's accurate, and it's also captured the spirit of the aircraft. An aircraft that was just designed by someone who was a genius of some dispute, but it still was just an incredible aircraft to look at. Like it really is. It looks fast standing still, and giving it contra-rotating props was always just a plus for me. In terms of the flight characteristics, one of the things that you're probably noticing here is it's got that bit of a porpoise going on at the moment. That's something that I've noticed that is with the Autopilot, but if you've got the AP off and you can trim this aircraft out so it handles absolutely beautifully when it's trimmed out. And so I find that in some ways flying it without the Autopilot is in some ways easier and better than flying with the Autopilot. You get far less sort of, the porpoising when you're using just hand trimming and hand flying it. So something of note that I did, and again, I don't know whether that's an issue with the sim or with the way the AP is coded, but also fundamentally it's the age of that Autopilot. It wouldn't surprise me if this is actually somewhat accurate. So there's that. But overall, this thing is looking absolutely beautiful. It really is. Now, beyond that, let's have a look and see what it looks like at night. So at night, you can see that the night lighting of the aircraft is... It's not huge, but getting this is a combat aircraft. Actually, I didn't put the landing lights on, but this is what I was talking about with the recognition lights before, is that you do have the recognition lights located on the belly of the aircraft, and if you also have an XF-11 and you're flying together, you will be able to see whichever recognition lights that you choose, you will be able to see accurately. This aircraft does have wing-mounted landing lights just inboard of where the drop tanks are, and they are very effective in the field. But let's have a look at what the cockpit looks like at night. So the office at night is a somewhat claustrophobic place. It really, really is. You do have a couple of different options for lights. You've got a console light here, which sort of just illuminates just the console on the side there, which I'm going to leave up a little bit. Panel lights, it's just basically a broad sort of, turn it back on, there we go. Sort of just to highlight the lights there. I generally don't use that one so much when I'm flying at night. And then you also have a nose white light. So essentially you can illuminate the forward area there, or you can leave it off. But yeah, that's pretty much the night lighting. Alright, I think that wraps up the night lighting. Let's have a look at some of the... one of the other little interesting little effects, but also a good look into the failure mechanism. So we talked a little bit earlier about some of the failures, the failure mechanisms that's in here, and one of the cool things I like is the effects that go with said failure mechanism. And one of the ones, what we're going to do today is that I'm going to trigger a failure. I'm going to trigger 2. And we're going to trigger the failures of our drop tanks. So there's something's, we've been hit by landing fire, we've got punctured our drop tanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly puncture these. So bang, bang. So it tells us straight away, okay, so you see here we've got a fuel tank, fuel left drop tank, large leak, and fuel right drop tank, large leak. Okay, so we've got large leaks coming out of our drop tanks, and we can see that the fuel there will start decreasing as the fuel flows out. But it's not just a systems thing that happens with this. Oh no, it's more than that. So the team actually modeled the fact that if you've got a fuel leak, if you look close enough, you can actually see the fuel leaking out into the airstream from the tanks. Doesn't matter which tank they do, and again, the different failures have different effects. And it's just a nice little touch that actually says, hey, you know what? There's a visual consequence to this failure that you can actually see and you can actually tell. So I really like the fact that they did that. I think it's something cool, it's something different. I really like that, so I'm glad they did it. Ironically, like including the drop tanks and including like this failure of the drop tanks is great. Ironically, it's also the drop tanks are one of my few issues with this aircraft, because you can only remove the drop tanks when you're on the ground. You can't the drop tanks off as they're designed to be, for on a real aircraft, especially should it have gone into service. They're designed that you would have been able to punch off those drop tanks. Were expended, and once you were over enemy territory, you would have punched off the drop tanks. So not being able to do that in sim is a little bit frustrating. It's a really small thing, but it's a little bit frustrating. Anyway, let's go and deal with this and then find an airport to land at. Alright, so we can see, oh yeah, those drop tanks are basically almost done already. So because we are pulling from the drop tanks at the moment, so what we're going to need to do is I'm going to change my left tank source over to tail tank. You've got to be fast, otherwise you can fuel starve the engines. And do the same with our right. So it's now pulling from our tail tank, which is the main tank for the aircraft there. I'm just going to sacrifice the last of that fuel. Alright, and that's fine. And what I'm also going to do, and I know I said don't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway, is that we're going to go we're going to go down here, and we're going to disable the tank. I'm going to close off the drop tank feed because we don't want them. We don't want the drop tank getting any fuel coming in from the pumps when we turn on the center pumps. We don't want to lose more fuel than we absolutely have to. All right, so we can do that, and I'll just quickly close that hatch again. All right, we'll bring our co-pilot back to our colleague back to the cockpit. Now let's find some. Now fuel has now left the tank. There's no fuel left in the tank. Now, if I remember correctly, again, small attention to detail. Now that the drop tank is empty, there's no fuel vapor trail behind it anymore because there's no need to, because there's no fuel left in it. So it's a little attention to detail like that piece for me, like that, which is it's not only does that failure look at the fact that yes, you're leaking, yes, you've triggered a failure of a loss of a fuel tank. It's more than that. What it's also done is it's also gone, okay, how much fuel is in the tank and at what rate it's going at, and it's going. And once there's no fuel in the tank, then it goes, okay, well, I don't need to produce the effect anymore to be able to say there's an empty fuel, there's fuel leaving that tank, because there's no fuel left in that tank to leave. So there you go. All right, I believe that should be Edwards down there, so which is where the second aircraft flew. So let's head back to Edwards. So we head back in, nurse our wounded bird back home, and come in for our landing and give our final thoughts. Okay, I spoke earlier about a situation that you really, really don't want, and this was one that just happened to me. Apparently I fiddle around with the mixtures a little too quickly. I managed to stall both of the engines, so I've got the two warning lights here that says my engines are currently out, so I have to retard the throttles, mixture set to full rich, prop pitch full fine, prime the left engine, and start. Go. And do the same with the right engine. You don't get the beautiful smoke cloud again, though. You don't get that. Okay, and I can see my manifold pressures are responsive again. Okay. Okay, alright, that was... And I lost a not insignificant amount of altitude doing that. So, yeah, that's something to be aware of, as I said, if you... and again, modelling of the engines quite well on that. And the fact that if you mess around with stuff a little too much, yeah, the engines don't like that, funnily enough. And they will come back and bite you on that. So, pilot beware. Airspeed back. Alright, that was a impromptu little lesson to do an in-flight start. And one thing I've noticed is that sometimes during in-flight starts your engines tend to not like the after landing, so we'll see how that goes. Alright, let's try again when we get to our circuit around Edwards. Looks like we are nursing a very sick bird home. Alright, as we're approaching Edwards here, let's have a look at our approach. Okay, so cowl flaps need to be opened. Okay, mixtures full rich, props full fine. Okay, SV 200 knots maximum, 10 degrees flaps, landing you down after 20 knots. Okay, okay, that looks pretty good. Flaps 30, 500 feet per minute max. Okay. Well, this is one of the things, is that the performance of the low speed performance of this aircraft is not great. So something to be aware of. Okay, so we're still gonna need to lose some altitude because we're very high over here at the moment. But we'll fly over the top of Edwards. Let me check the winds here. So it's coming out of 6 knots out of 260, so we'll be landing on 23 here. That'll be our landing runway. We'll need to lead off some altitude first. So leave a fairly steep descent here to bring us back into pattern altitude before we break over the top. Retard the throttles. It was fun on a few of my other test flights, getting the speed of the aircraft up to, actually, like max pegging the airspeed at sea level. Like this thing could have been an absolute speed record breaker, really, really good. As I said, you definitely don't want to be flying a race of something like Reno around this. You wouldn't want that, but at the same time, this thing is, it's aerodynamically, it is made to go fast, and go fast it can. Alright. Now, because it is we're using the authentic original instruments here, we don't have any ILS or navigation radios like that. So that is something that we don't have, but if you switch to the modern avionics option, you do have those options available to you. Alright, so we're going to cross the field here. We're going to bring our airspeed down. Feels good. Alright, landing light is on. Just drop 2 knots. And more than a few of my test flights for this have ended up in me becoming just like Howard Hughes himself, with the aircraft falling ungracefully out of the sky on short final due to its very, very poor performance at low speeds, which tracks with all the information and other pilot reports of the aircraft. So gear traveling. Okay, nose gear, all 3 gears down and locked. Fly quite a lot of this aircraft on trim really, really nicely. As I said before, the aircraft flies so much better on manual trim than it does on autopilot. It really, really does. Alright. Turning in for our approach. She does tend to want to climb in the turns. So you do have to keep an eye on that, and the flaps that you have are significant air brakes as well as being lift devices. They have a significant impact, so be prepared that when you drop out a notch of flaps, the nose will pitch up significantly. So make sure you're ready on the power. And you are ready on the trims for when that happens. Okay, turning in here. Power back. And Edwards would be, though it was known as Murdoch Army Airfield at the time, but Edwards would be the location for the final flights of the XF-11, but the Mark II, the one with the It didn't have the contra-rotating propellers. It was very sad. As the manual says, they are not as cool. They had boring four-bladed, single set of four-bladed props instead of contra-rotating propellers. Very boring, but significantly more engineeringly proved. Okay. Pressure is good. Okay, put that turn a little bit wide. Yeah, make sure you do have that power available to you because, as I said, like low speed handling performance is absolutely diabolical. Okay, lined up on the runway. It is interesting. So it is in some ways it's kind of a bit like an airline with the fact that you're, even though it's essentially a single pilot, you are offset to the left. So it is something that I'm not necessarily used to in a military aircraft. Okay, short final stage of flaps, and there's that massive nose pitch that goes with that. Right into trims. That's the part. One of the things that I really don't like about this aircraft, and then you got to frantically sort of adjust your trims and your power to stay on some form of steady glide slope for this one. Okay. Drifting a little bit to the left there. Okay. Easy. Easy. Over the thresholds. Power coming back. Back. There's the tendency for it to fall. And down. A little bit on the heavy side. But that is down. Alright, clean up the flaps. Taxi lights. It is that, I'm not gonna lie, that was probably, if not probably, that was absolutely my best landing in the XF-11 that I have ever done in any of my test flights prior to recording. So I am very, very happy that I managed to do that landing on camera. Very, very happy. Okay. To the taxiway. We'll taxi up on a Edwards from or Murdoch field from a very different era. And then we'll park up, shut the aircraft down, and we'll give our final thoughts on the Hughes XF-11 from Lord Frites. I still love that as a company name, as a developer name, Lord Frites. Or flying, sorry, that's Lord Frites, that's the user. Lord Frites is the user, Flying Frites is the company name, and it's just like, yes, I approve of this. I still love the contra-rotating props. Like, contra-rotating props, as I said, like, I just absolutely love them. I know they're an engineering and a development nightmare, but I don't care. They are just cool. All I need now is an Avro Shackleton and a Westland Wyvern. They're the two things that I really, really want to see. Don't think I'm ever going to get them, but I would love to have those two things. Alright, let's park up on the ramp here. Alright, throttle's retarded. Parking brake set. Mixture to fuel cutoff. Okay, magnetos set to off, fuel pumps off, fuel tanks closed. Okay, anti-ice systems set to off. Okay, lights off. Okay, and we're going to open up our doors. We're going to pull the chocks in. We're going to turn our avionics off. Turn off our generators. We're going to extend the access ladder, and we're going to put the covers on. We're not going to worry about GPU because we're not going flying again. And before I forget, so to fix your failures, so you can go to the failures tab here, and because we are now on the ground and parking brake fixed, you can click the fix my plane now. There we go. It should be airplane, but that's personal choice. Anyway, all right, let's put our EFE away. All right, let's jump outside and let's give our final thoughts. So, final thoughts on the Flying Fries Hughes XF-11 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This thing is a bucket ton of fun, like straight up. I am straight up going to say that I am biased because I love weird and wonderful, and you don't get much more weird and wonderful than essentially a one-off prototype that somebody spent way too much money on, designed and built by an eccentric, slightly insane billionaire. Like, you don't get much more insane and crazy and out there than that. So I straight away was pretty sure I was always going to be biased towards it. It also has contra-rotating propellers, so that's an extra instant win for me. But looking at it in more detail, overall, this aircraft is fantastic. It looks the part. It sounds mostly the part. Visually, very appealing. The model's been done very well. The textures are mostly pretty good. I think there's a little bit of room for improvement, but that's me being super pedantic because I'm also a texture artist. But the overall flying experience is fantastic. The integration of a failure system is really cool, particularly with some of the details, like the fact that you can actually see the fuel leaking. The choice of random failures versus specific failures that you want to cause is great, especially if you want to spice up some of your flights. Persistent state saving, it's great to see that. That is something that's becoming a lot more common and a lot more asked for by the community. Probably on that, I'd like to maybe have a way to say, can I just reset it all back to like when I first got the aircraft? That would be a nice to have. Not required, but it would be a nice to have. But overall, this aircraft does what it says on the tin. This is a fantastic representation of an aircraft that it existed, but modeling it in a way that brings it to life for future generations. Yes, it was brought to life in the Aviator, but this gives us a chance to stay hands-on with an incredible piece of history that, sadly, a lot of these sort of designs, if we as the flight sim community don't keep if we as flight sim community members don't keep asking and supporting developers who make iconic and unusual and rare aircraft like this, these kind of aircraft will be lost to history forever. So it is wonderful to see Flying Fries doing their part to preserve aviation history. As overall, I think the flight dynamics are pretty spot on. Everything that I've read about and everything I know about the XF-11, it matches how this aircraft flies. The performance is pretty good. The terror-inducing loss of altitude when you lose an engine is also there as well. And the absolutely terrible low-speed handling performance is apparently spot on. So yeah, this is absolutely for me. This is getting 5 contra-rotating props out of 5 from me, because this is a fantastic add-on, and I think it is high. If you're into Warbirds, this would be highly recommended for you, because this is an aircraft, an iconic aircraft from a generation of aviation that is now long gone. If you wanted to pick this one up and pick this one in your collection, pick this one up for now exclusively from the flightsim.to store. Link will be in the description down below, and you can add this one to your collection for $27 or your original equivalent, available now. And with that does not going to round out my review of the Hughes XF-11 from Flying Frites. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, as always, to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by following me on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch. Just search Novawing24. Alright folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.